Escalating tensions in Bangladesh against Hindus and minorities have now caught the attention of UK MPs. Situation in Bangladesh is on a knife edge, the MPs Preeti Patel and Barry Gardiner said while condemning the violence in the country. In fact, speaking in the United Kingdom Parliament, Labour MP Barry Gardiner even demanded a statement from Foreign Secretary David Lammy on the situation, and he just didn't stop there. Gardiner also raised concerns about the arrest of Hindu leader and former ISKCON priest Prabhu Chinmoy Krishnadas. In fact, more and more global voices, as you must have also observed, are coming out to speak against these targeted attacks. Donald Trump, remember, just a couple of months back also drew the world's attention to Bangladesh. Meanwhile, Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of the country, has accused Mohammed Yunus of instigating unrest and violence against minorities. So the big question is, for how long will Mohammed Yunus continue to turn a blind eye to the plight of its own citizens? We'll take that forward with our guest who's joining us tonight in a short while from now, but let's take a look at what the MPs, the UK MPs said, and then we'll take this big story with our guest tonight, Harsh Vardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary of India. Take a look at what the MPs had to say.
It's an important subject, and he's also raised the arrest of the ISKCON leader, and it's a place of worship I too am very familiar with, near his constituency. But, Mr. Speaker, these are deep and long-standing ties between our two countries, and the Minister herself is right to point out that even though she's visited Bangladesh recently, as my right honourable friend, the member opposite, has said, the degree of escalation in the violence is deeply, deeply concerning. And what we are witnessing now is just uncontrolled violence in many quarters. And we are now watching with horror and shock as further violence is spread in Bangladesh. And all our thoughts in this House are most definitely with the diaspora community here and those who are affected in Bangladesh. These are deeply disturbing reports. The Minister herself mentioned the deadly attacks and the violence that took place during what is an auspicious period, the Durga Puja festival in 2021. So given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern.
All right, so uncontrolled violence ensuing in Bangladesh, and that's UK MP Preeti Patel raising that issue. And of course, to discuss this and more, I'm now joined by Harsh Vardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Shringla, for joining us this evening on ET Now. Appreciate you taking the time out. Now, UK MP Preeti Patel has raised that issue of communal violence and persecution of the ISKCON priest in Bangladesh, along with Hindus and other minorities. Do you think international pressure will mount on Mohammed Yunus? And more importantly, will it lead to course correction on his part that's very much needed at the moment?
Well, the situation is a matter of concern because while there has been no systemic, pogroms of violence against minority communities, especially Hindus in Bangladesh, there have been a number of sporadic attacks, and I think those attacks are getting more visible, they're getting more serious, and they are eroding the secular fabric of Bangladesh very, very quickly. So I think there is a need for India and the international community to step in and engage, all those who are today in control of Bangladesh's, administration, to be able to give a very clear message that attacks on minorities in this manner will simply not do, and there will be consequences for such actions. I have to say that, clearly there are Islamist elements, whether it's the Jamaat-e-Islami, or whether it's the Hizb ut-Tahrir, or whether it is the Jamaat-e-Mujahideen Bangladesh. Many of these organizations owe their allegiance to, terrorist groups like the ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They are getting more active behind the scenes and contributing to a state of uncertainty and I would say, great deal of apprehension and fear among minority communities in Bangladesh. We've also seen there is a complete denial of the rule of law. The bail for, the ISKCON priest who was arrested has been, the bail appeal has been postponed. One of our very well-known and one of the very well-known journalists in Bangladesh, Moni Saha, has been arrested for no reason. Other than the fact that she happens to be a minority. There has been a lot of intimidation of the Hindu community in Bangladesh, and that certainly has led to a great deal, as I said, of fear psychosis across the board. It really, I think, is a process,
Absolutely.
and certainly it would help
Absolutely.
when you have people like the incoming president of the United States, Donald Trump, who made that very strong statement on the treatment of minorities on the occasion of Diwali. You
Right,
have,
Mr.
as you
Shringla.
said, the statement of former Home
Right.
Secretary Preeti Patel. I just saw another member of Parliament.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Shringla. And one can only hope that we can only hope that it turns to normalcy given the kind of global pressure that's now mounting on Bangladesh. But let me also draw your attention to this other instance. Bangladesh's Deputy High Commission was reached in Agartala, and there were reports that the hotels and restaurants have now decided not to entertain Bangladeshi tourists. What does Bangladesh really stand to sort of gain by antagonizing India and what we've seen over the past few months?
So let me say very clearly that I don't believe that there should be a targeting of diplomatic missions of other countries in our own country. We don't believe in that when it comes to Canada and other countries, and we should not be practicing that in any manner here by any of our citizens, and that should be dissuaded strongly. The fact of the matter is that a vast majority of Bangladeshis want good relationships, want a good relationship with India. There is a very strong positive empathy, and even today, a good number of people, I would say a vast majority, would be very much in favor of a continuation of their secular constitution, protection of minorities and Hindus. It's a small minority which is taking advantage of a power vacuum to create fear, psychosis, and uncertainty for their own reasons, which also might be timed to take advantage of this period before President Trump becomes president, in the United States. And clearly, I think there's a need for the international community, and India certainly has to step in and be very clear about the fact that this does not help the relationship. And you've seen that political parties across the board are united in the way they view the events in Bangladesh. And I think that message should go down very clearly that we will not tolerate this sort of targeting of minorities in our immediate neighborhood, and this will have consequences on the relationship in a way that could be detriment, to this Bangladesh.
Absolutely, Mr. Shringla. But coming to the arrest of Chinmoy Das, I mean, he's unable to find a lawyer and is possibly looking at a prolonged incarceration. Does it really indicate that the Bangladeshi society is deeply divided? Now, you were saying that it's only a small minority which is to be blamed. But what are Bangladeshi courts doing apart from lip service, if I may call it that?
So today, the courts are controlled by the Jamaat. The chief prosecutor is a Jamaati. The chief justice has links there. And I think, those, as I said, that have sort of moved into positions of influence and power, whether it's the media, it's the judicial system, I think are certainly, have put across the sort of a very strong sense of fear among the residents, among majority of people. As you saw, even, the people who are incarcerated for various charges, many of them trumped up charges. Each individual who is arrested politically on political grounds has 30, 40 murder cases against him. So there is a certain extreme way of dealing with this. And this is also linked to the control of the judicial system by the Jamaat-e-Islami and its various constituents. And I think that also makes it difficult for people to come out because there are these mobs that are controlled by the Jamaat Shibir, that's a youth faction of the Jamaat-e-Islami, that will prevent anybody from speaking out, that they will be attacked in their homes, they'll be attacked on the streets. You saw that Boni Saab was actually attacked by a mob on the streets, and the police say they rescued her, but they actually arrested her. So I think this is a matter of concern because the power structure has been taken over by these elements, and that's what it is.
Absolutely, sir. It is a matter of concern. But when Mohammad Yunus came, he was hailed as somebody who would restore order. He spoke of restoring democracy, rebuilding the country. But it only seems that the country has slid down a dangerous path. So who's backing Mohammad Yunus and his government? And why have his backers turned a blind eye to the plight of minorities? And my final question, what kind of transition do you really see happening there? And is there a time frame that one can assume?
So, when Mohammad Yunus came in, there was some level of hope because he's a Nobel laureate, he's an academic, he's a sort of a learned person, and there was a sense that he would provide very, very, benevolent sort of oversight of the process, the transition process. Is after all an interim administration. But essentially, what we find is that those around him and a lot of people who control that process are those that are, basically Islamists who are from backgrounds that are essentially anti-Indian and have a very strong, sort of fundamentalist agenda within the country. And I think there is a matter of concern there. What are these elements up to? How are they, operating at a level that seeks to take control of the reins of power and influence, the public mind, whether it's through media or whether it's, as I said, through the judiciary or through the academic process, the Dhaka University, basically a pernicious effort to take over the reins of power and influence in the country. And that is a process, I think, that is sort of expanding now. And I think there is a need for countries like India to step in and, advise the interim administration that this sort of process is not helpful.
Absolutely, Mr. Shringla. So while you may say that these are extremist elements and it's just a small minority, but definitely the buck stops with Mohammad Yunus, given that he was entrusted with the responsibility of course, taking the country out of the abyss, out of anarchy that had broken out after Sheikh Hasina fled the country. On that note, thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking with ET Now.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.